Hi, my name's Colette Acker. I'm an international board-certified lactation consultant, and welcome to Holy Redeemer's prenatal breastfeeding class. Today's outline includes some breastfeeding resources for you and also products. What about bottles? That's a question many families ask me. Sometimes they are worried because they're going to work or they want other people to feed the baby. So here, let me answer those questions for you. In the early days, we want you to stay away from bottles. And there's some reasons for that. The baby's stomachs are small. We already talked about that. They are capable of taking in more than your teaspoons and tablespoons because we have stomachs that expand. Your baby may take an ounce or 2 ounces on day 2 of life. And what does that do? That expands the stomach. And then we bring the baby back to you and you're like, here's your tablespoon. And the baby goes, excuse me? I want a refill, and they want more. So that sets you up for some trouble if they overeat and then you can't give them that much. So then you get a fussy baby on your hands. The other thing, if the baby gets a lot of bottles, then you're decreasing the time at the breast. And if we take away the time at the breast, what are we doing? We're decreasing your supply. So sometimes people are like, I'm just going to give a bottle just in case because I'm not sure I have enough milk. But that's going to ensure that you don't have enough milk when you supplement early. When can you start one? As soon as breastfeeding's going smoothly. So I want you to get the latch down. That means, in the beginning, we tend to have to take off our clothes, to have a bunch of pillows around us. It takes 4 tries and we finally get the baby on. And then we start to get our rhythm and we get good at it. Once it's easy for you, that's when you can show the baby another type of feeding method and it's not going to screw up the first. So most people find that about 4 weeks is a good time to start the bottle where it doesn't mess with breastfeeding, but it's not too late that the baby will refuse the bottle. So there's a fine time to begin bottle feeding, and usually between 3 and 6 weeks is that time. And can you do both breast and formula? You can, but I encourage you to, if you want to do it long term, you really need to exclusively breastfeed for as long as you can. So let's say you just can't pump when you go back to work. You want to exclusively breastfeed up to 6, maybe 8 weeks. Then you start knocking back the times that you're not going to be able to feed or pump. And you can train your body not to make milk at those times. But it's important to bring the milk supply to the optimal level first. And what about pacifiers? So we've seen research that using pacifiers reduces the baby's risk of SIDS. Breastfeeding mothers also hear that you're not supposed to use pacifiers because that could mess things up with latch. So what the American Academy of Pediatrics says is hold off on using the pacifier for the first few weeks and get the breastfeeding down, and then you can use it. But I'm not at your house at 3 o'clock in the morning or if the baby's screaming. So if you need to use one before that, just be careful. Don't use it to extend time between feedings. Just emergent use only. Now, breastfeeding resources, what kind of help do you have available? Well, you have lactation consultants here at Holy Redeemer, and your nurses are perfectly capable of helping you with breastfeeding. They've all done bedside training with our lactation consultants, so we're right on board to help you during your hospital stay. The key thing is ask for help. And tell your nurse if you do feel like you need to see a lactation consultant, let them know so they'll put in the order. Once you're home, you have a variety of ways to get help. We have peer counselors, so there's La Leche League and there's the BRC community counselors. There's groups of women who have nursed their own babies and have taken a training class to learn more about helping women either over the phone or via email. So that's a great resource to start. And there are local support groups that you can go to that you can hang out with your peers to learn more about breastfeeding and what they're doing. It's just nice to know you're not the only one that's exhausted and slightly overwhelmed. So it's good to commiserate with others. And then if you need the help, there are also lactation consultants available outside of the hospital, and some insurance companies cover the cost of that. So you can call and ask. We provide you with a booklet with all kinds of resources available to you here in this area. So I encourage peer support and to look for support groups in your area. There was a great story of this gorilla from the San Diego Zoo. She was held in captivity all of her life, and she gave birth, and she was very sweet to her baby, but she had never seen anyone take care of a baby, and she wasn't feeding it. Well, the zookeepers couldn't exactly go in and help her because she'd try and kill them. So they called the local La Leche League and said, bring as many breastfeeding mothers to the zoo as possible. And they set up chairs and benches in front of her cage and had the women sit down and nurse their babies. And it was like they could see the light bulb go off above this gorilla's head, and she started nursing her baby too. So hanging out with those who are doing well can help you to do well also. It might be a good idea to go out and buy a book, and here's two good examples. The La Leche League has The Womanly Art of Breastfeeding, and the Breastfeeding Made Simple is a wonderful book. So have some resources around at your fingertips. There's also the internet, and there's, great things on the internet and not great things. If you're looking for research-based information, I would say Kelly Mom has the most accurate information. And if you're looking for a lactation consultant, then ilca.org, that's ilca.org, is a place where you can find one when you put in your zip code. There's also Facebook groups and Instagram groups and Twitter and all kinds of things. So, search around for a group that may help keep you supported through this time. And what about our partners? Fathers and partners can help in many ways. They can bring the baby to you. They can be the official burper. They can bring you food, bring you drink, do the laundry, do the shopping, so you can do this one job of feeding your baby. And I find one of the best things is in the middle of the night, if mom's just really exhausted, maybe your partner can get the baby, change the baby, bring the baby to you, you feed, then they take the baby, burp the baby, and get the baby back to sleep. So there are things you can do, and babies love to be carried and rocked and walked around. So you could be that person. What about the foods? Many people are concerned that they may eat something that may cause the baby pain, discomfort, gas. But in actuality, research tells us that you can eat anything that you like, and what you eat isn't going to impact the baby's behavior. Some people often think like eating broccoli gives the baby gas. But if I eat broccoli, it's the chunks, the fiber of food going through our intestinal tract that give us gas. Well, we don't have chunks of broccoli shooting out our nipples, thankfully. So that can't get into your milk. The fiber's not going to be there. And if you think about it, gassy foods are some of the most nutritional foods that we can eat. So eat all the gassy foods you want. Spicy foods, that's not a problem too. Eating spicy foods isn't going to make your milk spicy, so that's good. There are times where a baby might have a food allergy or a food intolerance to the biggest culprit seems to be dairy. And it is a small percentage of women who experience this, but in those cases, they may have to eliminate dairy from their diet in order for the baby to feel comfortable. So some people are like, oh, that must be so hard. But if you think about the formula manufacturers, their main, the product is cow's milk. So that would be direct dairy and a lot harder on the baby's system. So don't go there first if your baby's fussy, but that could be a problem for a small percentage of women. And so don't blame your diet for a baby's gassy behavior. It could be too much milk, maybe baby needs to be burped more often, or a few other things. But if you do have a really fussy baby and you're wondering about that, it might be good to call somebody and ask for help. I often get the question about caffeine and alcohol. So caffeine, have a glass or cup of coffee in the morning, that's fine. Don't drink the whole pot. We have research because some preemies need caffeine as a medication. So they were concerned if mom was providing her milk that she would have too much caffeine in the baby's system. And they found that it didn't even show up in the milk until the mom had 4 cups. And I mean measuring cups, not Starbucks cups. So, that's a mug of coffee, and that's fine to drink. And you'd probably want to keep it in the mornings, not in the evenings. So if the baby does get a little, you don't want them perky at night. Alcohol, again, the key is moderation. So if you have one drink, you don't really have to do anything special. If you're concerned, because the alcohol does go into the milk, but it's just such a small quantity, if you have a drink, it's not going to hurt the baby. But if you're really worried, you would nurse the baby, then have your drink. It might be a couple hours till the baby wants to feed again, and it's probably out of your system. If you get a little tipsy, you not only shouldn't be breastfeeding your baby, you shouldn't be carrying them. But if you find that happens, if it's a time that you would regularly feed, you would pump that milk out and you can dump it out. And then once you're feeling good and sober, it's okay to feed the baby again. Medications, good news. All the pain medication they're giving you on the postpartum floor is okay with breastfeeding. So don't worry about that. If you're on a medication right now, I would suggest calling your OB, running it by them, and making sure it's compatible with breastfeeding. And if you need to take a medication while you're breastfeeding, you can run that by your pediatrician because it's their patient that it's impacting. And if you ever get the answer no, then check with the Infant Risk Center because that's the #1 place to get information on medication and its compatibility with breastfeeding. So how long do you nurse your baby? The American Academy of Pediatrics recommends exclusive breastfeeding for 6 months and then continued for at least 1 year with the introduction of solid foods. The World Health Organization recommends the same, but for optimal health says at least 2 years. So some cultures are nursing their children into age 4 or 5, and we think that's odd in our culture, but what we do differently is that we stop our babies from taking our milk and we start cow's milk. So in some cultures that seems odd, and they just give human milk for the length of time that the baby needs milk. So that's where some cultures are nursing into toddlerhood. And more we're seeing more families do this in the United States too. Now let's talk about products. One, breast pumps. Everyone can get a breast pump through their insurance company. Right now, the most popular breast pumps are the Spectra and the Medela pumps. And so I would encourage you to get one of those. Some people can sign up for them ahead of time, or we can help you get them right here on the postpartum floor. If a baby is completely separated from its mother, if the baby's in the NICU and you have to go home, you may want to invest in renting a hospital-grade pump temporarily because these are most like baby. So sometimes when you're not having any contact with the baby, we may need something stronger. And they cost about $75 a month to rent. And then there's some low-tech gadgets out there. The Hakka Pump, which is the one on the left, is a great new product. You place it on the one side and you don't have to use this pumping bra. It kind of you create a suction and it holds on to the breast. And the baby nurse is on the other side. It not only collects drip, but it creates a vacuum, and many mothers are gathering 1 or 2 ounces, especially in the morning time when their milk volume's highest. So it's a nice way to collect a little bit at a time. Or if you don't want to lug your big breast pump around, some mothers invest in a hand pump, something that you can just throw in your purse if you're going to be gone only for one feeding. There are a wide variety of storage containers. I would say predominantly people use bags because you can freeze them flat and stack them in your freezer nicely. Keep in mind when you freeze milk, you always want to leave a little room because milk expands when it's frozen. And you want to put down the date that you pumped, so you use your oldest milk first. Because it does have a shelf life, but it's pretty long, so it's good at room temperature for 6 to 8 hours, about a week in the fridge. And optimal is 6 months in the fridge or freezer, but acceptable is 12 months, which is great. And in a deep freezer, definitely for a year. So other products that are nice but aren't absolutely necessary. We already talked about the pillow. Some of you may want to buy one that helps you keep the baby in a good position. Nipple cream. So some people say, will this help me from not getting sore? Can I use it before the baby is born to prevent soreness? No, you can't, so don't do that. But you can make sure you get the latch right. So let's say the baby isn't latching right and you do have some pain. You can use these creams to help you heal, but ultimately we've got to fix the latch for it to really heal all the way. Nursing bras, I would encourage you to get one that ranges in sizes to begin with. So like you can purchase one that's 34 to 36, C to double D. Because we don't know how we're going to change as our supply increases. Some women are like, wow, look at these breasts, they're huge. And others are going, well, mine feel a little heavier. So until you know, which is at about 4 to 6 weeks when your milk supply stabilizes, you might want to get one that ranges in size. Breast pads, I would advise getting a box of disposable breast pads. Many of us leak in the beginning, but some of us continue to leak. We have leakers and non-leakers. So at the 4 to 6 week mark, if you find that you're still leaking, you may want to invest in ones that you wash and reuse. Nursing stools, I used to think these were silly. I did home visits years ago, and then I had an office and I put stools in there, and every time a mom comes in to feed her baby, I'm always like, oh, here, let me lift your feet up. And she's like, that's so much more comfortable. And I even saw on the internet some of those glider chairs come with footstools now that tip down. If you're returning to work, here are some products that may be helpful. There are steam clean bags. So let's say you're washing your pump parts in the same place everybody else is washing their food plates, and you think it's kind of gross. So you can wash your stuff, put them in these bags with 2 ounces of water, microwave them for 2 minutes, and they're sterile. So that may make you feel better. Or maybe you don't have a place to wash your pump parts. That's where those antibacterial wipes come into play, and you can wipe down your pump parts, let them sit for 10 minutes, and then they're ready to go. And a must-have for any working mother is the hands-free bustier. If you can pump without holding those things up to your breast, it's so much better. And you could do other things. Some people can still work while they're pumping. Some people can, call and check on the baby or eat their lunch. So it's great to be able to multitask when you're taking the time to pump at work. Baby carrying is great. I see women carrying around the car seats, and they seem so heavy. And I encourage moms to learn how to do baby wearing, because it can be easier, and if you get good at it, you can actually nurse the baby in the sling, especially if moms are a little nervous about nursing in public. And speaking about nursing in public, I find it interesting in our culture that some people think that this is weird and unusual and wrong. Well, I want you to know that the law says you're able to nurse wherever you want, whenever you want. So my final words of advice for today are, if you can, do that skin-to-skin contact after delivery and get that first feeding in. That first feeding is really important. And then keep your baby with you. We practice rooming in here at Holy Redeemer. We want you to stay with your baby during your hospital stay. That way, you are able to see all those early feeding cues and get to the baby quickly. So you're going to practice latch and positioning here. You're here for 2-3 days maybe. So think about it. The baby nurses about 8 times a day. You're going to get maybe 16 practice sessions in before you go home. So take that time to really work out the kinks before you're on it all by yourself. And ask for help if you're running into trouble. And finally, a sleepy baby can be normal in the first day. So work on hand expression, get a little milk into them. Don't worry, they'll wake up. Well, thank you for joining us, and I hope this was helpful. I hope you have a very happy birthday.